here's an example of Bernie really giving no fucks. This is pretty epic. Check this out. Here we go.
That race point you just brought up. In 1974, you said that busing policies were well-meaning in theory, but sometimes result in, quote, racial hostility.
What else did I say in that?
Tell me.
No, you got it there. Read it. Read the whole quote.
I don't have the whole quote.
The whole quote is the federal government doesn't give a shit about African Americans.
Oh, that is true. Let's stick with that race point.
We're watching it one more time.
In 1974, you said that busing policies were well-meaning in theory, but sometimes result in, quote, racial hostility.
What else did I say in that?
Tell me.
No, you got it there. Read it. Read the whole quote.
I don't have the whole quote.
The whole quote is the federal government doesn't give a shit about African Americans.
Oh, that is true.
So, first of all, I got a new ringtone. That whole thing, by the way, that whole thing's my new ringtone. Bernie Sanders handing it to this Washington Post reporter. Do you realize how sad it is? We live in a country where instead of the media holding corrupt politicians accountable, politicians actually have to hold the media accountable. Like, hey, you cherry pick this quote. You cherry pick this quote to try to get a soundbite. Here's what I actually said. Oh, and by the way, you like how this guy pretended like he didn't have the full quote, like he didn't know the full quote. But then when Bernie Sanders said the full quote, all of a sudden he knew what Bernie was talking about and he had a response to it. Do you notice that? Oh, I don't have it. I don't have the full quote. I just have what I was given permission to say. I just have the cherry pick thing I have in an attempt to smear you. I'm trying to get a soundbite to make you look bad. That's what I'm trying to do. We should have a media calling out Joe Biden for his bullshit healthcare plan. Calling out the military-industrial complex. Calling out Donald Trump on valid criticisms. Calling out Donald Trump on all of his horrific policies. And yes, the fact that he says outrageous, horrible shit too, yes. But that shouldn't be the only thing that gets talked about 24/7. That should be the job of the media. Instead, you literally have a media who just tries to have a gotcha moment with a politician who's actually trying to do the right thing. Someone like a Bernie Sanders who's actually trying to do the right thing. It's unbelievable. And Bernie Sanders has to call him out. Bernie Sanders has to do the journalist's job in this, for instance. Tulsi Gabbard has had to do the same thing. It's remarkable. There should never be a scenario where a journalist is facing off with a politician and you find yourself rooting for the politician. Even if it's a politician you like. Bernie's not perfect. There's valid things to criticize Bernie on. Same with Tulsi. Same with anybody. No elected official is perfect. That doesn't exist. There are valid things to talk to them about. Valid things to criticize them on. Cherry picking a quote and taking a quote out of context ain't one of them. That ain't one of them. So you should never, no matter who the elected official is, if you find yourself rooting for the elected official over the journalist, it means the journalist is not doing their job. That's what it means. The journalist is not doing their job. And here's a for instance of that happening, albeit a pretty funny and amusing one. So there you go. Bernie Sanders there.
Get your news on with Ron. Don't you want to know what's going on? We're getting our news on today. Get your news on with Ron. Don't you want to know what's going on? We're getting our news on today. You can tweet me an article at Ron Placone. We'll go through it together and make it our own. Get your